What if one of the most famous stories in human history was not really about a boat, but about the collapse of an entire world? Long before written history as we know it, ancient texts describe a civilization that had grown powerful, advanced, and deeply corrupted. According to the book of Genesis, the earth became filled with violence. Humanity had multiplied across the land, building cities and shaping cultures. But something darker was unfolding beneath the surface of this ancient world. The scriptures say that the thoughts of humanity had become continually evil. The world had crossed a line, and in response, a decision was made that would reshape the entire course of human history. The heavens would open, the fountains of the deep would burst forth, and the world would be washed clean. But one man, Noah, would be spared. Why did this flood happen? Was it simply divine punishment? Or was the ancient world hiding a mystery that humanity has long forgotten? Tonight on Ancient Ledger, we explore the truth behind the Great Flood. A story of corruption, survival, and a warning that echoes across time. Before the flood, the world was very different from the one we know today. Genesis describes a time when humanity began to spread rapidly across the earth. Families multiplied, settlements grew, and societies expanded across valleys and plains. Agriculture flourished, animals were domesticated, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. But the Bible hints that something unusual was happening during this era. Human lifespans were incredibly long. Some individuals were said to live for hundreds of years. Imagine the knowledge that could accumulate over centuries of life. Entire civilizations could develop under the guidance of people who remembered generations of history firsthand. Yet despite these long lives and growing societies, morality began to decline. Violence slowly crept into human culture. Power began to overshadow compassion. And as civilization expanded, so did corruption. The ancient world was reaching a tipping point. As populations increased, so did complexity in human society. Tribes became nations, communities turned into kingdoms, trade routes formed across distant lands. But rapid growth also brought competition and conflict. Powerful leaders began to dominate weaker groups. Resources became contested. War slowly emerged as a tool of control. Genesis describes a world where violence had begun to spread everywhere, not just isolated acts of aggression, but a culture where brutality became normal. The scriptures say the earth itself had become corrupted. The balance of creation was breaking. And as human ambition grew, something else entered the story. A strange and mysterious event that has puzzled readers for thousands of years. Genesis chapter 6 introduces one of the most mysterious passages in the Bible. It speaks of beings called the sons of God. These figures saw the daughters of humanity and took them as wives. From these unions came the Nephilim. The text describes them as mighty warriors of old, men of great renown. But the meaning of this passage has been debated for centuries. Some believe these were fallen angels. Others believe they were powerful rulers or corrupted leaders. But whatever their identity, their presence marked a turning point. The world was changing. Something unnatural had entered the human story, and the influence of these beings may have accelerated the corruption spreading across the earth. The ancient world was becoming something it was never meant to be. Genesis describes the state of the earth with a chilling phrase: the earth was filled with violence. This was not a single region or nation. It was everywhere. Conflict had become normal. Human life had become cheap. Power ruled over justice. The strong oppressed the weak, and corruption spread through every level of society. Imagine a world where fear ruled daily life, where cruelty became entertainment, where greed and domination replaced compassion. The ancient world had lost its moral compass, and according to the scriptures, the Creator looked upon the earth and saw what humanity had become. What he saw was not good. Genesis tells us that God saw the wickedness of humanity. Every inclination of the human heart had become evil. The text says something profound. God was grieved that he had made humanity. The world had become so corrupted that it could not continue in its current state. But destruction was not the ultimate goal. The flood would be a reset, a cleansing of a broken world, a chance for creation to begin again. Yet even in this moment of judgment, mercy remained. One man was different. One man still walked in righteousness. His name was Noah. Noah is described as a righteous man. Righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. While the world around him spiraled into corruption, Noah lived differently. He walked with God. He remained faithful in a world that had forgotten its Creator. This made Noah stand out in a dramatic way. When the decision was made to bring the flood, Noah was chosen. He and his family would survive. But survival would not be simple. God gave Noah a task unlike anything ever attempted before. He was commanded to build a massive vessel, a structure designed to preserve life through a coming catastrophe. It would be called the Ark. Noah's story takes a dramatic turn when God gives him an extraordinary command. He is instructed to build a massive vessel, unlike anything the world had ever seen. This structure would not be a small boat designed for rivers or lakes. It would be enormous, built to survive a disaster that would cover the entire earth. Genesis gives detailed instructions for its construction. The ark was to be made of gopher wood, sealed with pitch inside and out. Its length would stretch 300 cubits. Its width would measure 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. To ancient listeners, these dimensions would have sounded almost impossible. This vessel would be more like a floating fortress than a simple ship. 3 decks would divide the interior into many chambers. A single door would serve as the entrance, and above it all, a window would allow light to enter the structure. For years, Noah worked faithfully on this project. While the world continued in its normal routines, Noah prepared for a future no one else believed was coming. As time passed, the ark grew larger and more visible across the landscape. What once began as scattered beams and timber slowly transformed into an enormous structure. Its towering wooden frame would have dominated the surrounding plains. Anyone passing nearby could see that something extraordinary was being built. Yet the purpose of this structure must have seemed strange. There were no oceans nearby, no great seas that required such a vessel. To many observers, the ark may have appeared unnecessary or even foolish, but now continued, day after day, year after year. Faith guided his work. Every plank placed into the ark represented preparation for a moment that had not yet arrived. and slowly the vessel was completed. Once the ark was ready, another remarkable event began to unfold. Animals from across the land began to appear. Genesis describes pairs of creatures coming to the ark, birds of the sky, animals of the fields, creatures that moved along the ground. Each kind entered the ark according to its species. The text suggests that Noah did not gather them himself. Instead, they came, an orderly procession of life approaching the vessel. This moment must have been astonishing to witness. Across the plains and valleys, animals moved toward the ark. Creation itself was preparing for what was about to come. Then the moment arrived. Genesis tells us the flood began in the 600th year of Noah's life. The heavens opened. Rain began to fall upon the earth. But the flood did not come only from the sky. The scriptures also speak of the fountains of the deep, waters rising from beneath the earth itself. Rivers overflowed their banks, seas surged across the land. Rain continued without stopping. Day after day, the storms intensified. The ark floated upon waters that continued to rise. The world Noah once knew was disappearing beneath the flood. The rain did not stop after a single storm. It continued for 40 days and 40 nights. Imagine the sound of rain striking wood without pause. The sky remained hidden behind endless clouds. Waters covered valleys, forests, and plains. Mountains slowly disappeared beneath the rising flood. The ark drifted upon the surface of an expanding ocean. Inside the vessel, life continued quietly. Outside, the world was transformed. Landmarks vanished. Rivers merged into vast waters, and the ancient world faded beneath the storm. Eventually, the waters rose higher than anyone could imagine. Genesis states that even the highest mountains were covered. The earth had become a world of water. What once held cities, forests, and rivers now lay hidden beneath the flood. For months, the ark drifted across this silent ocean. There were no landmarks to guide the journey, only clouds, wind, and water stretching in every direction. Yet within the ark, life remained protected. The vessel carried the future of the world, a small community preserved within wooden walls, waiting for the waters to recede. Interestingly, the story of a great flood is not unique to the Bible. Many ancient cultures preserved similar traditions. The Sumerians recorded a massive flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Ancient Babylonian texts also describe a great deluge. Even distant cultures across the Americas and Asia contain flood legends. Each story tells of waters covering the land, a chosen survivor, and the preservation of life through a vessel. Why do so many cultures share such similar memories? Could these stories be distant echoes of the same ancient catastrophe? Or are they symbolic reflections of humanity's deep awareness of nature's power? The mystery continues to fascinate historians and archaeologists today. For many months, the ark floated upon the waters. Inside, Noah and his family waited patiently. Outside, the world remained silent. No cities, no forests, only water stretching to the horizon. But slowly, the flood began to change. The rain stopped. The clouds began to thin. Winds moved across the waters, and the level of the flood slowly began to fall. What had once been endless rain gradually gave way to quiet skies. Noah needed to know when the land had returned, so he released a raven. The bird flew back and forth above the waters, but it did not return with news of dry ground. Later, Noah released a dove. The dove returned to the ark. There was still nowhere to land. After several days, Noah released the dove again. This time it returned carrying a small olive leaf, a sign that vegetation had begun to grow again. The earth was healing. Eventually, the ark came to rest. Genesis tells us it settled upon the mountains of Ararat. After months of drifting across the flood, the vessel had found solid ground. The long journey was ending. Noah and his family waited until the land was fully dry. Then the door of the ark was opened. Fresh air filled the vessel. The world outside looked completely different. The flood had reshaped the earth, but life would begin again. When Noah and his family stepped out of the ark, they entered a renewed world. The air was clear, the skies were calm. Animals spread across the land once again. The earth had been washed clean, but Noah did not begin with building or farming. His first action was worship. He built an altar and offered thanks to God for their survival. This moment marked a new beginning for humanity, a second chapter in the story of the earth. After the flood, God made a covenant with Noah, a promise between the Creator and humanity. Never again would a flood destroy the entire earth. The waters had served their purpose. But the cycle of life would now continue without such a global catastrophe. This promise carried deep significance. It symbolized stability. The seasons would continue. The earth would remain a home for humanity, and the memory of the flood would serve as a reminder of the past. To seal this covenant, a symbol was given, the rainbow, a bridge of colors stretching across the sky after rain. For Noah and his descendants, the rainbow represented hope. It was a reminder of mercy after judgment, a sign that the earth would not face such destruction again. Even today, whenever rain clears and sunlight breaks through clouds, rainbows appear across the sky. They quietly echo the promise given long ago, a simple yet powerful symbol woven into nature itself. The story of Noah is more than a record of an ancient disaster. It is a reflection on the choices humanity makes. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, but the moral direction of humanity remains deeply important. The flood narrative reminds us that corruption can grow quietly, yet it also shows that renewal is always possible. From the ark came a new beginning, a chance for humanity to learn from the past, and perhaps that is the lasting message of Noah's story. Not simply destruction, but warning and hope.